Hello, fellow citizens! I am your host, Jess, and this is your reminder that the weight of the entire world is not on your shoulders, and you can make a difference. This podcast is about what it means to be a citizen and neighbor where you live. For me, that's Philadelphia. There are lots of ways to be a citizen and a neighbor, and I want to cover all of them in this podcast, starting with the belief that citizens should be informed. Because of our current nationwide agenda, I'm kicking off the podcast by examining the candidates and roles on the 2020 general election ballot. Today I'm joined by Sarah, who I grew up with in South Plainfield, New Jersey. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Have you been in New Jersey your whole life, or have you traveled and lived in other places?
No, I'm a Jersey girl through and through. Lived in NJ all my life. Used to be a resident of Middlesex County for majority of that, and just 2 years ago, with a few extra days, I moved to Somerset County. So
Nice.
yeah, only 2 counties.
Does it feel like a big difference going from one county to the other?
It really doesn't, and I'm not too far from our hometown. I'm only like half an hour, if that. So it's odd that it's almost like a different county.
Right.
But like all the Plainfields are different counties. That's like the most mind-blowing thing to me. I can't even, I think one of the Plainfields might be in Somerset County.
Wow.
I can't remember.
So
Yeah.
how would you say that you spend your time?
Right now I have an 8 to 5 job that I'm thankful that I still have during this pandemic.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no one was really let go there. So I've been working from home majority of the time. And then, yeah, after that, when my husband comes home, Darren, we'll either do housework or we cook dinner and then do housework. Or if we're just like, no housework, we're exhausted, we'll watch some TV.
What field do you work in?
HR.
Ooh. So you're at a computer a lot, or?
Yeah, basically I live a computer.
Cool.
So those that are, seeing this visually, these are my blue light glasses. That's why they're massive. Try and protect those eyes as they age, staring at a screen.
Yeah. Okay, so you're keeping busy even in this time.
Mm-hmm.
How long would you say you've been voting?
Okay, so I'm slightly ashamed by this. My first presidential election that I voted in was the Hillary and Trump 2016 election. I think our first presidential election we could have voted for was Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And was it McCain in 2008?
I think so.
Yeah, so I didn't vote for in either of those elections that Obama was running in. But 2016 felt completely different. I was like, I have to. Now's the time.
And would you say if you voted in other elections as outside of presidential ones?
Well, New Jersey's weird, as we were talking before this, that they have off years. I'm trying to remember. I think we did vote last year.
Okay.
Want to say that we did, or I don't know. I feel like we voted.
Have you voted for like judges maybe?
Honestly, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just like a blur.
That's good to know. Yeah. I mean, like we were talking about before we started this, is people are just really busy.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of time to do this research. But you did some research for us today.
I tried. Oh, and I also did vote in my first primaries, because I didn't vote in primaries for 2016.
Oh.
You have to, because I was always hesitant to claim one party or another.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily align with either.
Mm-hmm.
I would kind of consider myself, I guess, more independent,
mm-hmm.
because I don't fall strictly in line with either. So I was like, okay, I do want to kind of vote in the primaries though. So it's like, okay, I'm going to put that on this party. And now, we voted in the primaries, and Darren didn't really understand what was happening. So I had to walk him through that.
That's nice.
Yeah. Because one of the other ways that I get news is Philip DeFranco.
Oh.
one, we don't have actual TV, so we don't get the mainstream media. We watch Philip DeFranco because he tries to, and I think he does well, where he gives you the news, very unbiased. Then he gives you, his opinion on the matter. Mm-hmm. And then he'll ask you in the comments to put what and have a conversation of why you feel the same or differently than him.
Yeah.
So that's how I get majority. And he does like world news sometimes. Obviously, recently it's been a lot of what's going on in the States.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I was getting more informed leading up to everything.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice that you want to like look for that information.
Yeah, I feel like it also somewhat helps in HR too, just to know like what is happening around the world. Like from watching his stuff for about COVID before everything started like really shutting down, like hearing him kind of talk about it, I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be such like we'll just close things down for like a week or two and then everything will go back to normal. Like he was covering what's happening around the world and you're like, okay, this is pretty serious. So like I felt like that helped me being like, okay, this is going to become a massive deal in every way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so you said he covers nationwide and a little bit of local. So then when you had to do your research for today, did you feel informed like as you were getting into it, where you're like, oh yeah, like this makes sense, I know what these terms are, or did you feel like you were trying to swim without a raft?
I just decided to just jump in without any help. I was just like, you left it very open to what I felt comfortable discussing. And I was like, okay, let's do the questions. That can't be that difficult comparing to looking at politicians' history and how they voted in the past. And, if they're an up and comer, because I tried doing that for the primaries and that was a lot to look at. And so then when I was like, let's just do the questions, it could be a lot to look at. So I'm glad that we talked beforehand to try and figure out.
Yeah, before we started recording, Sarah and I were like, I think I know what this is. What do you think? Okay, we're kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you mentioned, we're going to talk about the ballot questions on New Jersey's ballot, which I looked at Sarah's ballot and I'm really jealous because they're not voting for that many positions. Ugh. But yeah, we have 3 questions. And you have a mail-in ballot?
Yes. So everyone in New Jersey should receive, if they haven't already, they should be receiving their ballots. Mm-hmm. I believe if you go to a voting station on election day, they're still going to give you a paper ballot, from my understanding. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I didn't have to request it. It just got sent because of COVID protocols. Wow. Yeah, but my parents in South Carolina, I think, still had to request.
Yeah, it is so state to state.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And that's why I'm glad that we're chatting about it, and like especially on the podcast where I have listeners in different areas, and I'm curious how many people are shaking their heads right now like, yeah, I got my mail-in ballot like automatically, and other people are like, well, I wish we did that.
Yeah, I had to go through all these steps, or like I still can't get it, because I see like people on commenting and stuff being like, I just want to go vote in person. And it's like, this is the safest option right now. I don't like, and I believe that there's a poll worker shortage too. Yeah. So, I mean, that's already an issue to begin with. And now COVID on top of that, just, you got your ballot early, just fill it out and go drop it off at one of the safe locations if you don't trust the postal service for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm pretty sure by town hall, I can walk there in like 15 minutes and drop off my ballot if I want.
That's awesome. But you don't get a sticker.
I didn't get a sticker in 2016. I was real disappointed. So I'm not going to lie. We went to Chili's afterwards because I got an email from them being like, if you vote, you can come and get an El Presidente margarita, and we'll give you a shaker for you to take home that says I voted.
Oh
I think it says 2016 in there. And people didn't know what I was talking about when we went into Chili's to request it. They're like, what? So I had to like show them the email. Be like,
Did they
he
have
came
them?
for this. Yeah, we have two, and we went with his sister, so Takara got one too. So we have one in just like on display out in the kitchen, another one in the cabinet.
Can you grab it?
Yeah, hold on. Well, I can make Darren grab it.
Yeah.
Or can you grab the I voted shaker?
This is not for the audio people, but we will
Yeah.
describe it as best we can. Her dutiful husband is grabbing it for her now. The anticipation.
Yeah, so it's got the date.
Can I say something?
I mean, you can say something. I don't know.
I personally like how it says, I voted for another president. I know that's supposed to be very generic, but I feel that it has a specific meaning to me.
Yeah, thank you for the cameo, Darren. Wow. For our listeners, we're looking at a kind of shorter blue shaker.
Mm-hmm.
And like
with
Darren,
red, stars on it.
And like Darren told us, it says, I voted for another presidente.
Mm-hmm. And it has, November 8th, 2016 on it. So you can always say, I voted on this day.
That is so nice. Are you going to use it this year after you drop off your ballot, you think?
Ooh, maybe. To go get like a label maker and like add a year, like this year's on the back of it.
Oh, that would be
like a trophy. You just keep adding on.
I like it. Yeah, I think like it sounds silly, but like I think when they mail you a ballot, they should mail you the sticker that says I voted. There's something like weird, like I don't know. I think everybody likes to get the sticker.
Yeah. And I feel like there just wasn't any stickers last time, and I was very disappointed. But maybe they're hesitant because there's so many people that don't actually vote. So they're like, we don't want to give them a sticker in case they don't return it.
Oh.
So that could be the other thing.
Wow. Keeping the state budget real tight.
Yeah. Can't give out those stickers.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know about you, but I think we're in a good mood to get to these questions.
Yeah. At least the first two.
Yeah, at least the first two. So if it's cool with you, I'm going to read the question. I know for question 1, I don't have a history lesson this time. I have a botany lesson. And then after that, we can dive into your research and we want to kind of present the yes and the no side. So for our listeners who are trying to do their own research, you can go to a lot of different sources for your ballots. I've been using vote411.org a lot, and once you get to the questions at the bottom, they explain to you why some are arguing no and why some are arguing yes. And I thought that was really helpful because you don't see that when you get your mail-in ballot. Like there's nothing trying to sway you either way. The mail-in ballot does try to give you some more verbiage about it. But hopefully what Sarah and I present will help everybody understand a bit which way they want to lean. Because we're not trying to tell anybody how to vote, but we want you to understand maybe what works best for you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so question 1 on New Jersey's ballot says, do you approve amending the Constitution to legalize a controlled form of marijuana called cannabis? Only adults at least 21 years of age could use cannabis. The state commission created to oversee the state's medical cannabis program would also oversee the new personal use cannabis market. Cannabis products would be subject to the state sales tax. If authorized by the legislature, a municipality may pass a local ordinance to charge a local tax on cannabis products. So that is question 1. We're talking about cannabis. But what is cannabis? So we're going to do a botany lesson. Because I don't know about you, but I didn't know the difference between like hemp and marijuana, and when CBD oils came out, I was real confused. I was like, wait, is everybody just like smoking weed on the streets? And that's completely wrong. So for our botany lesson, we have to first learn that cannabis is a plant genus. That means it's the generic name for a whole group of plants that is made up of different cannabis species. The two most common species are Cannabis sativa and Cannabis indica. I hope I'm saying that right. Marijuana is made up of dry leaves, flowers, seeds, and stems from either sativa or indica species of cannabis. Marijuana is high in THC. I'm going to try to say this word. Tetrahydrocannabinol.
That sounded right to me.
Oh, and THC is what causes the psychoactive response, or your high, which involves altered senses of comprehension, mood changes, impaired memory and movement, hallucinations, delusions, and more. But medicinally, because you're like, what? Why would you want that in your medical marijuana? Medicinally, THC can act as an anti-inflammatory, anti-nausea, appetite stimulant, and sleep aid, among other benefits. So I just want to take a detour for a hot second and talk about hemp, because like we said, some people switch that verbiage around, but marijuana is a shorter, bushier plant with wider leaves, whereas hemp plants are tall and skinny, and hemp leaves are longer and more narrow. So hemp comes from the Cannabis sativa species, which is far lower in THC. It's only like 0.3% or lower, so you won't get high. Like you could smoke hemp if you were crazy, I don't know, but you won't get a high, you'll only get a headache. Cannabis sativa is naturally higher in cannabidiol, and I looked at that pronunciation like an hour ago, but it's a really weird word. But cannabidiol, I think it's cannabidiol. That's the CBD that we keep hearing about. So the medicinal effects of CBD are similar to the effects of THC, but you won't get a high. So I just wanted to clarify, I think some people are using cannabis and marijuana and hemp all interchangeably, and they are not all the same. So marijuana, you get high. Hemp, you can use to make cotton fabric alternatives. It's a cotton alternative.
Yeah.
And other cool things. So, Sarah, do you want to expand on question 1?
Sure. Do you want me to go into my Adam Ruins Everything research?
Sure.
Okay. So Adam Ruins Everything kind of did, I don't know whether it was a full episode or just a clip about cannabis and marijuana and how it kind of came about. So the history was, it's been used all the way back to like BC times. And then in the 1930s, the director of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry Anslinger, basically created this narrative, a racist narrative, and went and told Congress that it creates insanity, criminality, and death for its users. So then in 1937, Congress banned marijuana. So, but by the 1940s, scientists have already proven that marijuana wasn't connected to violence or insanity. So nothing changed though. They just knew that it, wasn't causing these things, but they just kind of let things happen. So then there was a bipartisan commission in 1973 that suggested to Nixon, to decriminalize it. And Nixon, being Nixon, was like, no, the war on drugs starts now. So his former aide, and I believe his job title was White House Domestic Affairs Advisor, from 1969 to 1973. John Ehrlichman, I might have totally butchered that last name.
Sounds good.
Yeah, said in 1994, we knew we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war or Black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and Blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. So they've known since the 40s
Wow.
that this initial, thing of it causing insanity or criminality or death has been wrong since the 40s, and they still just kept it.
Wow.
Yeah, so if there's anything wrong, I'm blaming Adam Ruins Everything, because I got it.
I like that. Was very concise. Yeah, that's our history lesson.
Yeah.
So, do you have your mail-in ballot with you?
I do.
Can you read to us the interpretive statement?
So the interpretive statement. So you get your mail-in ballot, and then you also get other forms as well.
Mm.
So you have to turn over the mail-in ballot to get the question. But to get more information, there's a handout.
Right.
Just for those that maybe don't know. So the interpretive statement says, this amendment would legalize a controlled form of marijuana called cannabis. Only persons at least 21 years of age could use cannabis products legally. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission would oversee the new adult cannabis market. This commission was created in 2019 to oversee the state's medical cannabis program. The scope of the commission's new authority would be detailed in the laws enacted by the legislator. All retail sales of cannabis products in the new adult cannabis market would be subject to the state's sales tax. If authorized by the legislator, a municipality may pass a local ordinance to charge a local tax on cannabis products.
Yeah, so that didn't give us any more new information.
No.
Oh boy. So just like alcohol, you got to be 21 and up to play. Let's see, what else? Oh, Vote for 1-1 also has like a tiny explanation about like how this is not hemp.
Oh, they do?
It says cannabis is defined as all parts of the plant genus Cannabis L, but does not include cannabis for medical purposes or hemp. If passed, this amendment authorizes a new industry in New Jersey. Issues around cultivation, manufacturing of products, local authority, possession limits, and retail must be detailed in laws to be approved by the legislature. Yeah, so, this question is only talking about the sale for personal use.
Mm-hmm.
It's not talking about, can we carry this around? It's not about who can manufacture it. Like, that would all come separately.
Mm-hmm. Has nothing to do with the medical that's already, in existence.
So there's some people who are in favor and some people who are against it. Do you mind, Sarah, reading the reasons a voter might vote no?
Sure. The reason why they might vote no is some of the increased sales tax revenue may be needed to pay for the cannabis regulatory system rather than adding to the general fund. Do you want to break down each one as I go, or just go through?
Yeah, we can try to break it down. So do you have anything you want to expand on that?
Well, you had kind of said it earlier, just like when they first start this, it seems like it's going to go into the system instead of just general fund, but eventually it could go to the general fund.
Yeah, and that system is, so this would pay for the cannabis regulatory system. That's the board of people who are overseeing this process, and they're already overseeing medicinal marijuana. It's a state commission, and I guess, yeah, they need resources. They need to get paid.
Another reason is legalization may result in increased cannabis use in communities, potentially leading to traffic accidents, cases of overuse or abuse, and unintended access by young people.
Mm-hmm.
That one just seems, I'm not going to lie, that one just seems kind of silly to me because young people are going to use it no matter what if they feel like it. We need to stop saying it's a gateway drug. Because it really isn't. That's something else, like Adam Ruins Everything talks about, is like a lot of people that start using it might not even continue using marijuana to begin with, or cannabis. So it's fine. And to me, the leading to traffic accidents, people are already doing this.
Right. I mean, I would
and it's
be
no
really
different than alcohol.
I'd be curious to see, because yeah, like you said, people already smoke marijuana, whether it's legal or not. So my question, we didn't do the research on this, is how many recorded accidents have any evidence that marijuana use was involved by the drivers or pedestrians, like whoever is involved in the accident, you know?
Mm-hmm. So in Adam Ruins Everything, granted, it wasn't driving, but he like showed how many deaths per year by alcohol or something. And then it was another topic. And then it was how many by marijuana or cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no one from the data he pulled.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know whether that would count towards if there was a car accident, but like, I don't know how you, like, for a second when I was reading this of cases of overuse, I thought it was going to be like overdose. I was going to say, I don't know how you overdose necessarily. Like maybe you do go, because I don't use it, but maybe like you go kind of like out of your mind a little bit. But I don't think it makes you stay, like you're not going to stay that way forever. Like
Yeah.
you got to ride it out.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it is that addictive that you would abuse it. But I might just be naive in that sense.
Well, but hey, I mean, some of the voters might think the same way. Like this, yeah, people who are voting on this, it's not just people who have any experience with weed, whether medicinal or just personal use. So I think it's good to bring up how you're processing this information.
Mm-hmm. Like, I don't care if people use it, right? Like,
right.
Granted, right now you probably shouldn't because you're not supposed to. But like, if you're doing it safely, go ahead. Like, I'm not going to stop you from using it.
And if that money eventually goes back to the state and makes
it could. Yeah, why not? You know, like I see this as a benefit.
Oh gosh.
And how I compared it to alcohol, because when we were talking about this before, I was like, oh, well, people drive drunk and everything. Like, what's the big difference? So then the next reason why someone might vote no is because technology comparable to alcohol breathalyzers currently does not exist.
Right.
People get around the breathalyzers in the car.
Mm-hmm.
I know a particular person that has, I will not name how I know them. But they would have someone else in the car because every so often, I forget whether it was like every few minutes or like if you stopped like at a light or something, it would make you do it. But the person that was driving with this breathalyzer, who shouldn't have necessarily been driving, would ask their passenger to blow in. Otherwise, the car's not going to, start again.
Yeah, this is those court-issued breathalyzers after you've already been,
in trouble quite a bit
by the law.
Yeah.
Alcohol.
And so, to me, it doesn't matter if there's not technology to use a breathalyzer for this, because there's always ways around it. Not that I'm condoning it, people. Don't take it that way. But I know that people look for other ways around. So
it's interesting. Yeah. I mean,
like, if that's your one argument,
right.
to me, it's not strong enough.
Trying to think off the top of my head, like, what would be another way at the scene for somebody to really gauge if this person has been consuming marijuana? Like, I don't know.
You can't go by like if their eyes are bloodshot or anything. I don't know if
But
that's
would
exact,
that really like hold up in court, you know, like with a
Well, 'cause-
breathalyzer that's scientific?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, even if you have like bloodshot eyes, it could be from stress or like crying or, you know, like there's
Yeah.
so many other reasons that I don't see how you prove it.
Right.
That's the thing.
We'll see what the regulatory system, if they have any hand in that. I'm really curious, like, what's going to happen with this.
Yeah.
I want to know.
Let's see. And then there's the underground cannabis market will still exist. It may be cheaper to buy on the black market, which has no regulations or sales tax. It exists. Let's be
Yeah.
real. It exists. So I'm sure it's not going to all of a sudden go away. I'm sure there's no regulations, but as of now, there's no regulations on it of like making sure that it's not, there's extra additives and like there's another drug in there. You know, there's always people that are probably going to do that stuff. But that one, it's just adding the part about or sales tax. That's a little bit like the state's a little salty.
I'm curious how accessible this personal use marijuana will be. Like, is it going to be in the same shops that are doing, where you have to have a medical marijuana card? So are they just going to do away with the medical marijuana card? Or, because like, are they setting up whole new shops if it's personal use marijuana?
That's a good question. I feel like there's a certain process for the medical marijuana. Like, you have to go get approved by your doctor, and then you pay the state a fee. Then you have to wait for them to process to approve you.
Oh.
And then you have to get your card.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the approval process doesn't take too long, but from what I have heard, sometimes the state can get delayed in processing and issuing your card. And I forget I think you can go like to that doctor once a year to keep it renewed.
Okay.
Other doctors sometimes like if you're like a new person, they might want you in like every 3 months or so, every 6 months, just to make sure that you're feeling okay, that this is how you want medication. So I feel like if they still add it to where you you can go get medical marijuana, you can just, I don't know if they would have different grades, you know, depending on the severity of, you know, your medical issue, that you're going to need a stronger strand or something. I don't like that, kind of leaves it up in there, but I think it would be fine if they're all in one location. You just show your medical card otherwise.
Because then that kind of like plays down the idea that this would create more jobs. You know, it's like, well, if that's the case, it's not creating more jobs. It's just bringing more people into the dispensaries, which is fine. I mean, I think it just makes me wonder, you know, how many are there? How many people are comfortable going there? Because it's probably going to be hard for people to get used to.
I'm sure people will still end up putting up their own shops more than likely, or like maybe joining like a place that you can pick up CBD or something in the meantime.
Oh, that's a really good point.
You know, just like adding in like 2 businesses, like, oh, if you're only here for CBD, go over there. If, you know, you want some of the cannabis, you know, go over to this section of the store. You know?
Oh, wow.
I think it leaves a lot open to interpretation as it's written now of how they want to go about doing it. But I think it still would create jobs.
Yeah.
And then the last reason to vote no.
Yeah.
Is cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. So New Jersey might get it together, but.
And that's been a problem with the medical marijuana for a long time too. So, oh boy.
I say look at Colorado.
Yeah.
They seem to be doing good. I'm pretty sure it's helping their revenue, you know, their state revenue. We already have a case to look at. It's not like we're the ones paving the way.
Right. I guess the only thing is that Colorado will kind of start to lose its shine. You know,
true.
Like,
they might like
Colorado to get our weed. Like, well, I could just go to New Jersey and get my weed. But so maybe that'll actually bring people across But so then I guess that's the question, right? So then you'd probably have to have a New Jersey license. You'd like to buy it. Do you have to be from New Jersey to buy it? Or anybody can come into the state? It doesn't say you have to be a New Jersey resident.
I'm gonna look at it from like a fireworks perspective. Like you can get fireworks necessarily in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And set them off. You can't technically do that in New Jersey, but you can drive over to Pennsylvania and go pick them up.
Yeah.
And come back and light those up over here. So it's not like they're checking your license there. So in that aspect, I think it would kind of be the same, where they're not going to be like, oh, you're from Pennsylvania. CFO, we're not going to service you. I think it's just kind of like, hey, maybe stay in the state because you're good here. But if you go outside of the state, that's on you.
Yeah. Wow. I'm glad we're talking it out. So we also have reasons a voter might vote yes. So the first one says legalization will allow economic development, create jobs, increase state sales tax revenue, and may generate local tax revenue. The second one is ending prohibition may lead to reduced costs of policing, arresting, prosecuting, and punishing people for cannabis-related offenses, which I think is the biggest one in my mind. Is we've talked a lot when talking about the other candidates on the Pennsylvania ballot is about prison population sizes and recidivism and how there's so many people being brought in for petty crimes, nonviolent crimes of one instance is like trying to sell weed. And then it just becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But so yeah, if this is going to be legal in New Jersey, then I also kind of wonder, like, those people who are selling weed on the streets, like we just said with the people voting no, they're saying like there's still going to be a black market, which might be cheaper. I guess the question is like, is anybody going to try to get those people on the streets that are selling weed to become part of this public market and be like, hey, we want people to run the store. Hey, we're looking for employees for the public use, not just medicinal use. Why don't you join us? Like, obviously you're selling weed because you need money. So why don't you just come make money with us? Like, that's
that would be a good way to go about it, to try and, in a sense, get rid of the black market on it. So
yeah.
Just try and recruit them to make it a legitimate business.
Yes. We should send that information to the Cannabis Regulatory Committee.
Yeah.
The third reason a voter might vote yes is training law enforcement to recognize drug effects has been found effective in identifying those driving under the influence. Like we said, that's still a little questionable. People react to what's that?
I guess if they have training, we haven't gone through it, and we wouldn't know necessarily. But if they already have ways other than a breathalyzer, then yeah.
Because weed affects people very differently, and like we said, with alcohol you have a breathalyzer, but with weed, I've been around some people who are high and I didn't even know that they were high. They're just, that's how I thought that was just.
And I feel like it can be different every time too.
Right.
Like you're not always going to necessarily act the same way.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So I don't know how I feel about that reason, but the next one says regulation may allow for quality control and best practices, better ensuring a safer product than an unregulated market. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
You want clean product.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last reason is legalizing cannabis will reduce low-level possession arrests and begin to address the harms of racial disparities in cannabis-related arrests. So, yeah, I think we covered all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm really curious. We're going to follow this one and see what happens. So, I mean, now just saying that out loud, I'm like, oh my God, of course, after all of the ballots are counted, we have to have you on again and we'll talk about the results.
Okay.
And then like
that will be less research at this point.
Yeah, because I think that's like what's the hardest part about the common citizen is like, oh, there's going to be an election in like 3 months. Okay, now I have to like look into stuff. It's like, no, like let's just stay on it throughout the year and start to follow stuff. We just have to find the time to do it. And like,
yeah, and it becomes way less overwhelming if you try and just like, when you first get into it, it's always overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're like on the younger side, because there's so much back history to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get it, just keep it up.
Yeah.
So that you're not going to get that overwhelming feeling again the next time that you have an election, and hopefully not just the presidential election.
Right. And I personally feel like that comes down to talking to your friends and family openly about it. Like Tom and I actually went to see some friends yesterday, one of his old college friends that we haven't seen in a really long time. And before we left, he was like, oh, by the way, like so-and-so's parents might pull us into some political talk. And I was excited. I was like, oh, awesome. And he was like, they're conservative. And I was like, even better. Like, yeah, talk about it. We didn't end up talking about it. And I was really upset because I didn't want to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, if they bring it up, I'll listen and like maybe I'll ask questions to understand more of things that I haven't delved into just yet.
Mm-hmm. Or their perspective if it's completely different from yours. Yeah, and that's something that, like, going back to Philip DeFranco, I like that if he has a differing opinion, like, it's good to hear. And he tells you all the time, like, don't just get news from me. So I apologize. But he's always like, get it from multiple sources, because if you're always listening to the same source and they have a bias, you're going to just fall into that.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what someone else on the opposing side is going to say, because you might, dig your feet in on your side and be like, no, you're completely wrong.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy, I want to try and say this carefully so it doesn't come bite me in the butt. I do enjoy having conversations with people of different political beliefs, but it gets frustrating if you give facts, like it's fact, and they fight against the fact because of a differing opinion. Like I posted something on something my mom posted, and all I said in agreement basically with someone of a different political affiliation was just, facts don't matter more than opinion. And it blew up, and she started attacking me. And I was like, I agreed with you. I just added an extra sentence that I didn't think would be controversial. And literally that thread went on for like 30 comments.
Oh my
Because then other people started jumping in and like attacking. And like, I never once attacked. And then when I pointed out that I got attacked from this person first, they were like, grow up. And I was like, you're the adults here. Like, it was just so ridiculous. So I understand why people get intimidated to talk to opposing views, because sometimes that's the reaction, even if you agree.
Yeah.
So I remember growing up in the 90s, my parents wouldn't talk about politics, because that was just always the way that they were taught. Like, you don't talk about politics.
Yeah.
But now it's like almost taboo not to talk about politics. Like, I appreciate that it's become more open.
Yeah. And hopefully it's just gonna, more people are gonna come into it. When a couple people heard about this podcast, they were like, oh, it's a political podcast. And I'm hesitant to say it's a political podcast because I think that's a turnoff for people. And I wish it wasn't a turnoff. Like I said, like, I got excited when I heard we might talk politics, and I just want other people to get excited. But I think for most people, when they hear politic talk, like you said, it has this connection with arguing. And so if we could just like switch that and be like, it's a conversation, it's not an argument, and even like not even a debate, like it's just a conversation, then I think maybe people would be more excited to learn. Like, you can go into a room and not know anything. It doesn't mean like you can't be part of the conversation. Like, you can still listen and ask questions. The best thing you can do is ask questions.
Yeah, definitely. Because I always feel overwhelmed, still sometimes, and I'm like, I'm not very educated. You know, I didn't complete college and everything, so I always get intimidated. But you just got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and lots of people who are talking about politics, if they're informed, then they'll answer your questions. I hope that like nobody asks a question and then somebody like doesn't know how to answer, because it sounds like that person maybe is an imposter. Or like they only know their own agenda, and you have to know all sides, especially when people are asking questions like
why is it that way?
Like with the marijuana question, it's like, well, why would anybody say no? But maybe there's other people who are like, well, why would anybody say yes? And so that's like why we're presenting both sides. Like, I think this episode, especially today, is like we're having a conversation about it because we're still trying to figure out what these questions are even asking, let alone what our possibilities, like which way we lean. So, speaking of that, should we move on to question number 2?
Sure.
Okay. Question number 2 asks, do you approve amending the Constitution to give a $250 property tax deduction to veterans who did not serve in time of war? Do you also approve amending the Constitution to give a 100% property tax exemption to certain totally disabled veterans who did not serve in time of war? The widow or widower of these veterans also would receive this $250 deduction or 100% exemption on after the veteran's death. Whoa, that's a lot. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I did my research of looking into the wars, like the major wars that we've done.
Is that the first thing you did? Like when you read this, what was the first thing you did?
Yeah, I was like, one, I was thinking the intent was still there to serve. So I don't see why anyone should be held back. Then immediately after that, I went to the computer and I was like, when haven't we been in war?
Yeah, so that was my question. I was like, what is a veteran? Like, how are you defined as a veteran if you didn't serve in a time of war? Like, I was really naive about this. I was like, I don't know what that means. And then the term peacetime came about, and that's where I got on the same track that you are.
Like, I looked at, let's see, like World War I, World War II. I don't know if we're really going to have vets from back then. Korean War, early 50s. Vietnam War came about 2 years after that, 1955 to 1975. I didn't realize how long that one was. I called my mom once I saw that. I was like, is this right? I thought it was like the 60s.
Right.
And she was saying how she had a family member that went missing. And she's like, no, he went missing around this time in the 60s. I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought it was like 60s to like early 70s. To no fault of my high school or any other history teachers.
That was a long
Apologies.
time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
So then after that, we had a big gap until the Gulf War in the early 90s. Then our next biggest gap was the Middle East, 2001. So like I was saying earlier, there's kids that haven't been alive in the States with us in peacetime.
Right.
So I find that insane to begin with.
Yeah.
And then I just go back to, one, there's so many vets right now. Two, the intent was there. And it's not their fault that we weren't in a war.
Right.
I'm sure that they would have gladly gone over if they enlisted.
Well, also just to clarify, when I was doing my homework on this, they were saying, so peacetime doesn't mean that a soldier was just sitting at home twiddling their thumbs. They are still active. They're just not in combat. So a good example that I read was after the Vietnam War, there was still this question of if the Soviets were going to attack. And so the troops were still gathering information, they were testing weaponry, and they were just staying alert for the next battle, which didn't happen until 1990. So, you know, it's like, well, they didn't know that nothing was going to happen for 15 years, but they were still active. And so I think that for me was the biggest clarification of what peacetime meant. Peacetime, I think I don't think that's the best term for it because it's very misleading.
True. Yeah. And I don't know whether this is the right way to think of it too, but like you still have like Annapolis and everything, like you still have the people going through schooling and teaching you and like training you and all that stuff. Like,
right.
So why not?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read the reason why someone might say no?
Let's see. Well, I also thought it was really interesting that they talk about the widow or widower of these veterans. And the episode I just finished research for the PA state treasurer talked about, basically, so after you pass away, you have to pay a tax in Pennsylvania to move your assets.
And the state tax.
Yeah. So if you're married, though, there's no tax for your spouse to get those assets. And this is just like more and more. I'm like, okay, I guess it is good that I got married because it seems like there are some benefits that are just like
some.
Yeah. Like so many people are just like, oh yeah, like we'll condense our taxes or whatever. But I'm just learning more and more. Like Tom's not a veteran, so like this doesn't apply to me. But it's just another one of those things of like, hey, get married just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you read the no explanation?
Okay. Extending this property tax deduction will increase expenditures from the Property Tax Relief Fund. Fiscal estimates provided by the New Jersey Office of Legislative Services state that this would cost the state $13.6 million from the fund in a fiscal year 2020.
I tried to look up the transparency report for New Jersey's Treasury because that's a thing, and states actually get graded on their transparency of their finances for the state's money. I don't know off the top of my head what New Jersey's grade is, but I don't think it could be that great because I was trying to figure out how much money is like in the property tax relief fund now or like last year or whatever. And I didn't try for like too long, but I was trying to navigate and I couldn't find.
And I mean, there's going to be plenty of people that aren't going to, like, if they can't find it easily, they're not going to look for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It wasn't the most like welcoming website to try to find that information, but I think that was like my biggest question reading that $13.6 million. And I'm like, well, I don't know how much that is of the fund. So I'm not really sure how detrimental that is. Maybe that sounds uneducated, but I think a lot of voters might ask that question.
Well, add the cannabis and then maybe that will help.
So the reason a voter might vote yes is the reasons for providing the property tax relief as recognition of service rendered to our country should extend to veterans who served our nation regardless of the state of conflict. So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty humane way of reasoning for that. There's no other like statewide benefit. So it really is more of a personal choice here. Interesting. This does, on Vote 411, it does give us one statistic here. It says approximately 25%, or just over 53,000 of veterans in New Jersey did not serve in a time of conflict. I thought that was important. I think that's like the biggest information I got out of this background on the Vote 411 page to help kind of like lean one way or the other.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I'm just dreading the next question.
You want to read it?
Sure. So question number 3 is, do you approve amending the Constitution to change when new legislative districts are created if the federal census data is delayed? The current COVID-19 pandemic has delayed census data collection. If New Jersey does not receive the census data in a timely manner, new legislative districts may not be ready in time for state legislative elections in the year ending in 1. This change to the redistricting schedule will allow legislators to be elected that year from their existing districts for their 2-year term in office. The new districts will be used starting with the next scheduled general election for the state legislature.
Oh boy.
Whew.
Did you hand in your census?
I did. We did ours, I want to say in February.
Yeah.
I had to
What
call my mom because I was
February?
like, I don't remember what nationalities I am.
It was that, yeah.
Because I was always one of those, like in elementary school, I remember kids being like, I'm 25% this, I'm 15% that. I'm like, I don't know. All I know is I'm a mutt. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just a bunch of stuff. Like, I don't know. So I had to write down what I was. But the other thing is my dad doesn't know necessarily what he is because his father was adopted.
Oh gosh.
So yeah.
Well,
So I did it to the best of my knowledge.
yeah.
Darren's was easy. Darren's side was easy. He's like 3 things.
Oh gosh. Okay, so it has an interpretive statement on your ballot, but it is a lot.
I feel like it just adds more confusion.
Mhm.
You
So
wanna read
it does tell us that, because the question says, if New Jersey does not receive the census data in a timely manner. So then the interpretive statement says that the governor should be receiving the census data by February 15th, and that's of next year. So, and then it's saying the commission will adopt, I don't know, maybe I'm going to make this too difficult.
that was our big struggle of trying to understand it ourselves and then break it down
Yeah.
to make it easy to understand.
Oh my gosh. So they're saying this constitutional amendment requires the commission to delay creating the new districts if the governor does not receive that data by February 15th of 2021. So if he gets all that data on February 16th of 2021, they're going to delay creating the new districts. That's all I know for certain. That's what we're voting. That's what New Jersey is voting on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what New Jersey wants? Then say yes.
It just throws us off because we have elections that year, ending in 2.
Right.
Instead of just like everyone else.
Oh man.
And should we just give the reasons why you might vote no or yes?
Well, I still want to pick this apart a bit. Okay, so
Okay.
say he gets this census data after February 15th. They're delaying creating new districts. The commission will adopt new districts after the November general election, but not later than March 1 of 2022. So there you go. The new districts will be used starting with legislative elections in 2023. Why do they have to say in the year ending in 3? Say what year. Everybody knows what year it is. Like,
Well, because like it says later on, they're saying that this change is permanent because of every 10 years.
Right. This is broad. I see. Mm-hmm. And so this is all what is going to happen if everything is delayed. If you vote yes, and ultimately this gets a yes, new districts are going to be determined by March 1st of 2022. Then those districts will be used starting with the legislative elections in 2023. I think that's good, a good amount of information to go on to the, do you think?
I think so. For some reason, this is the one question that does not click in my brain.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just because of how it's worded.
And they do, like, Vote 411 is really trying, because they give you the interpretive statement from the ballot, and then they give you background written by Vote 411, and that is the one that's using the years and numbers. So they're really trying.
Yeah, because if you go on, like, the New Jersey election website, it doesn't break it down as much. And they tell you what part of the state constitution you can look up, what they're looking about amending, and that does not help. It's almost like it's in another language, unless you understand how to read it.
Right.
Like, it does not clarify it at all.
And that's really what we've learned throughout this whole process, is, like, you got to speak the language.
So thank God for Vote 411.
Yeah.
And podcasts like yours.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so, like, the only other thing that I think kind of contributes to considering this is that if you're talking about the General Assembly and those representatives, they have to live in their district for 1 year prior to the election. I don't know if that affects anyone. I don't know.
Well, technically, wouldn't it affect at least this first one? Because if the census, if you're not living there yet,
right?
Like, that's kind of the only thing. I don't know.
Oh man. Oh, here's another one with numbers on the Vote 411 in background. It says New Jersey state legislative districts are drawn by a 10-member commission that is appointed in equal numbers, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, by the chairs of the state Democrat and Republican committee. This commission is certified by December 1 of the year in which the census is taken. So that's, the commission is certified by December 1 of this year. That's in a couple of months. If the commission cannot agree on the map, an 11th member tiebreaker is appointed by the Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court. This question does not change that process, but I think it's important to know the process. It does give until March 1 of 2022 to certify a new map, as opposed to prior to a June 2021 primary. Yeah, so I don't know if that's anybody, but I think that's really interesting. Who's making the map in New Jersey?
Yeah, and showing that it is, in a sense, bipartisan.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to do the no's, or you want to do the yes?
I'll do the no's.
Okay.
So, first reason to potentially vote no. New Jersey population is more radically diverse. Sorry, racially, not radically. Yeah. My bad. Let me start over. Okay. New Jersey population is more racially diverse than 10 years ago. New Jersey's Latina and Asian populations have grown by 20% since 2010. Extending the current district lines for 2 years means that these populations will not be accurately reflected or politically represented for an additional 2 years.
Yeah, we were trying to figure this out, and I don't get how the
nationality necessarily.
Yeah. Because, like, just get involved in your community. Be represented.
Yeah, because I almost don't know whether I'm taking it maybe the wrong way. to be like, oh, all Asians vote this way. Like, is that what you're trying to say? Like,
what are they saying?
yeah.
Because whoever your representatives are or your candidates, like even before they become a representative, if they're running, they should know their district. They should know who they're running for. So yeah, maybe we're both misunderstanding this, but
like, I don't want anyone to be not represented.
right. Mm-hmm.
But if it's more just about population, I can understand, because then that would affect the numbers of representatives.
Yeah.
But, and again, I may be just being naive in this. I don't see how necessarily the nationality plays an effect.
Yeah, for redistricting.
Yeah.
Just for redistricting. Like, I don't know. All right.
All right. Another reason. There are other solutions. Change primary election date in 2021. Switch from odd to even year elections. Or use existing map just for 1 year. Or how about we just do what every other state does?
Yeah, that's always like, why is your ballot so different?
Because we have off-year elections, for those that don't know.
Oh, man.
That's why ours is so small.
Yeah.
Because we just keep voting.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. They just want us to be engaged, so they're trying to force it
I
by
guess.
having other, like, elections other years.
Oh, get engaged, New Jersey.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're trying to do. I don't know. That's me trying to look at it from a positive perspective.
Yeah.
All right, and the last reason why you might vote no is this change is made permanent. Every time New Jersey does not receive census data by February 15th, existing districts remain in effect for another 2 years. This would limit flexibility in handling delays for future census counts not affected by a pandemic. That's just the one thing that gets me nervous, is saying that it's permanent.
Yeah, but I think it's just like stay involved, stay educated, know who's doing what. I just feel like a lot of this comes down to more, it's not just, so like everybody's like trying to get everybody excited to vote, and I'm like, that's fine, but like, don't just vote, like know what you're voting on. Like
I've seen you sharing the screenshots of like people texting you, and you're like, okay, that's great. Yeah, I want to vote, but I'm not just going to vote this one way. I'm going to be educated.
Yeah, I can't tell you I'm voting all Democrat, because maybe I'm not done with my research, but also, no, I'm done with my research, and I'll just say I'm not voting down the line Democrat. And that's fine. There's a lot more, the thing is, there's a lot more Democrats and Republicans who are reaching across the aisle. And so I'm not scared by the word Democrat or scared by the word Republican nowadays for certain representatives, because they've shown, they're like, I'm not just going to vote down the ballot. And so I think they're setting a really good example of like, guys, we actually have to know what the information is. Like, that's what I want all my listeners to consider, is like, know the information. And yeah, it might get a little confusing. We're figuring it out, but just be educated. Please vote educated.
Could not say it better, because that's honestly what it is. And then you don't necessarily want to vote all one party if they're not willing to work with the other party.
Yeah.
Because then you're screwing not only yourself over, but all the other citizens in your state and potentially the surroundings.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, no. Well, trying to be positive, let's go to the reasons a voter might vote yes. March 1, 2022 certification of new legislative district lines gives more time for the redistricting process in determining new legislative map. So they're just like, let's have more time.
Let's not rush this process.
Yeah. The second one says the proposed delay avoids compressing primary timelines, providing a normal time frame after new districts are certified to field and run candidates for 2023. And the third reason to vote yes The option prevents possible multiple one-year terms in elections, such as an election in 2021 under the old map if census data was delayed, followed by a special election in 2022 and a regularly scheduled 2023 election. That, I feel like, is kind of the most clarity that we've gotten. I think that's like a really interesting point. I'm really glad they made that point.
Because I feel like the first 2 points on why you might vote yes is just literally like the same thing.
Right.
Just like a slightly different variation of the wording.
Like,
but I feel like the third one definitely breaks it down more.
It made the background information more condensed. And it was, they're like, if we're going to do this, we're going to switch stuff up 2021 and then 2022 and then 2023. I mean, if your representatives are doing what you want them to do and you're getting out there to vote, then they'll stay in the seat. I don't know.
Yep.
Well, we did it. We talked about the question of the New Jersey ballot. Wow.
Yay. I got through it.
So do you feel ready to vote on those questions, or do you still think you're going to look into it more?
I'll probably look into 3 more. The first 2, I came into this pretty much knowing what I was going to do. But it was the third one that I called you panicking about that I still probably want to just get a little bit more comfortable with it.
I just think it's awesome too that like you read questions 1 and 2 and you had an idea of what you wanted to do, but you're like still ready to do the research and dive into it more, which I'm excited to do that. My ballot questions, I feel like, have a lot, like they are loaded questions. So part of me is like not ready, but I'm like, yeah, let's learn.
Yeah. It's just because it's like, I know that I feel a certain way, but I want to understand the effects of it.
Right.
And why I feel that way. So if someone's like, well, why did you vote for this way? Like, why did you vote this way for this question? Like, I did my research on it. It's not just my feelings on the matter. This was my research on it. So,
right. Yeah. I think that's really smart. I mean, and like we were talking about how to have conversations with people, politic talks. You should be able to back it up.
Yeah, and it can't all just be your pure emotion of like, well, I just don't like this. So that's like, but why? You have to go into the deeper meaning of it all. And so, and if you can't, if you're just like, it's because I don't like it, because that's how I was raised. Well, that's not a good enough reason.
Right.
Times change.
Yeah. You should be proud to be educated.
Yeah.
You got to put in the work to be educated too.
I don't know if you heard when I said, oh, I made it through. Darren was like, oh, you're done? Because he's doing some work right now, so I didn't know if you heard him.
That's the interesting thing about this. Like, every time I do research for these episodes, it takes me so long that I'm always worried. I'm like, oh my God, this episode is going to be so long. But then once you just like regurgitate it all, it's like, oh, all those hours of research really comes down to like, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes of explaining, or at least having a conversation about it. Which is why we're clarity.
Yeah. It adds a lot of clarity to it all, hopefully.
Yeah. Sarah, what does it mean to be neighborly to you?
Ooh.
How do you think you're being a neighbor? Because especially like you're in a new area. It's like still kind of new to you.
Yeah, I mean, personally around me, I know that I'm not being very neighborly because I'm not like interacting, but also COVID. And I would go to more protests that I've seen, but again, COVID. But I think to be neighborly is to care more about yourself and understand how you act and vote and say, and your actions have an effect on more than just you and your household. It has an effect on so many people.
Oh my God, I love that.
Thanks, I just thought of it right now.
Yeah, that's great. You do. Especially, I know this whole year, that's a lot of people have made that point to kind of self-reflect and just question. And I know, like, with our group of friends, we've tried to have conversations about what's going on. And there are times where I think each of us have taken the time to, like, let me step back and think what everybody else is saying, and then how does that make me feel, and maybe why does it make me feel that way? Because I know I was just really confused when a lot of things were happening. I was confused about how it was making me feel, and I was like, well, why do I feel that way, and do I still want to feel that way now that I've kind of dived into the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I'm definitely the hothead of the group.
I think all of us kind of were, and yeah, we're just trying to take our time with it.
Yeah, and not make anyone feel attacked, because that's the biggest thing. I don't care if you have an opposing view, but you need to explain the why to it all. If you just drop something off and then you back away when other people start asking you questions, it's like, what was the point of even doing that unless it was to be somewhat divisive?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about our friend group.
No,
this happen in family groups, like everywhere. It's just like, if you're going to do something and say your opinion, that's fine. I have no problem with you stating an opinion. But if someone then comes and gives you a fact that opposes that, you have either accept it or you need to try and show an opposing view of it.
Yeah.
But to me, facts are pretty, if it is an actual fact, not like this is my feeling, so that makes it a fact.
Right. Yeah, we had to have, I loved seeing all your sources that you did for today.
Oh, yeah. Granted, the first 3 are really just the same website. It just takes you to different portals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the first one was about the questions, which did not necessarily help, but it gives you kind of like all of the stuff on the ballot. Then the other one was if you wanted the Department of State, New Jersey State, and then if you wanted the Department of Elections. And then I also did look up the New Jersey Constitution.
Yeah. So were you able to find it?
I don't know how reliable this source is, but it was when I looked up Article 4, which is part of Question 3. It's Article 4, Section 3 is what they're debating should be amended. I went to ballotpedia.org. I'm going to give you the full thing.
Yeah.
/article _ IV, so like Roman numeral 4, comma, _ new _ Jersey _ Constitution. So again, ballotpedia.org /article _ IV, comma, _ New Jersey _ Jersey _ Constitution. And I typed it in after I found it just to make sure I was repeating it correctly.
Good. Yeah. You're going to send me all of that.
Yeah. And I'll send you the link for Adam Ruins Everything too.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I really liked, I think you had a really good tip for the day for everybody who wants to make a difference today is take care of yourself, self-reflect.
And don't beat yourself up if you're just now getting it all together.
Yes.
Give people time. It's never too late to start doing this research.
Yeah, I think that's another kind of eye-opening thing about this. Like, I am being really vulnerable with this whole podcast, and I just want everybody else to be vulnerable. Like, I'm so glad that you agreed to be a guest.
I said yes, and then like after I said yes, I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So was the yes just like a reflex, or did you like think about it and you're like, yeah, I'll do it, and then you were like, no, wait?
Well, once you kind of was like gave me the option of what I would feel comfortable with, then it was like, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
and I want to be more proactive and like open about everything, but it is so terrifying because I have just recently started doing more research and everything. So, and I'm not educated. So like that also goes into my head of like, do you actually know what you're talking about? Like you have way more educated people out of your friend group.
Oh,
that's like, and no one makes me feel that way. That's just entirely on myself.
But it's really interesting. Like I've learned that because I'm trying to make sure I'm getting my facts right, that I just have to find like the right sources for me. Because there's so many people out there that are sharing information. And so even just to understand, when I was looking up like cannabis, marijuana, and hemp, I needed to find the sources that were saying it in the words that I could understand. And I think that's just part of this trying to have open conversations is like figuring out the language, but don't like see a fancy word on a government website and remember it and then just like throw it into a political conversation to sound fancy.
I'm so educated.
Unless you really know what it means and like feel like it has to be that word.
If you can't answer a question based off of that, don't use it.
Right.
And the other thing is, please don't just read headlines on Facebook.
Yes.
That was another big thing. Like I posted an article or reposted an article, and I read the article, and there was a picture along with the headline. I think it was about Pennsylvania, how there were ballots that were thrown out. And the picture looks like there's hundreds. But when you read the article, it says like 9. So I just reposted it, and I was like, please do yourself a favor and don't just look at a picture, like the headline picture, and read the headline and think you know what it's going to talk about. Because too long didn't read, it was only 9. Like
it was, the whole naked ballot thing is embarrassing. Like just read the instructions.
Yeah, and don't just listen to what people are saying like on Facebook of like, you can only use this color. Like they literally give you a handout.
Yeah. They're trying. That's like the big thing I've learned is like there's people who are trying to educate each other. Like they're trying, they're not trying to keep everything a secret from everybody. Like the Pennsylvania State Treasury website is literally PA Treasury. Like they're not trying to make it difficult.
They're not like New Jersey. Shady and hiding everything. No, just kidding. I love New Jersey.
Like once you start to get more consistent with figuring out what's happening in New Jersey or even like in your county, you'll figure out how many resources really are accessible to you. And you'll start to figure out which ones are in your language, like which ones make sense to you. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Now I get to go educate Darren on this.
Yes, it's so exciting. That's what Tom asks me too, like when I'm doing all my research and then we'll like go for our daily walk. And he's like, so what is it you learned about today? And I get excited. I was like, oh, well, this and this and this.
Because you also know that he's not just asking to ask. Like he cares.
And he has to vote too. So, I mean, he'll probably like listen to the podcast, but it's different when I'm still doing the research and I'm like, he's giving his 2 cents of not only like what I'm saying, but like how I'm saying it. And he goes, oh, well, does that mean such and such? And I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. Let me dive deeper.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
We got good husbands.
Yeah, we really do. We got to hold on. We got to educate them.
Yes. And then when they ask questions, they make us get more educated.
Yes.
So that we really understand.
Oh, this is an exciting time.
Yeah.
We're
as scary as it can be. It can be exciting.
Yeah. Once we really like learn this language, we won't be intimidated, and then we'll be even more active.
Jess is going to be a national sensation with this podcast. We're going to give like Philip DeFranco a run for his money.
Maybe. Yeah. We might meet someday.
Oh man, could you imagine having him as a guest?
That would be interesting.
I don't know if he would talk about necessarily his ballot. Granted, it's not like this is only going to be about ballot, but his activism and whatnot. I would find that interesting.
Yeah. I'm glad to know what you would find interesting. It'll add to this. get some longevity. But yeah, I'm excited. So once all the ballots are counted, once we're done with the election, we're going to revisit this and we'll talk about like what happened.
Yeah, the outcome.
I can't believe I never thought of that before. Thank you, Sarah.
That's what I'm here for.
Well, let me give my little closing pitch. Please share, fellow citizens, with your friends all over the country so they can learn about the positions, the questions, some history lessons, as well as the current happenings, and maybe even be inspired to start their own informative podcast. Share what you think it means to be neighborly by emailing me at thisjess@gmail.com, thisjes@gmail.com. This has been Jess. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks
Will
for
you
making me see.
lead us out with the catchphrase?
You didn't prepare me for this.
See you.
Oh, I'll see you around the neighborhood. I don't know why I said it like that. I'll try it again. I'll see you around the neighborhood.